to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before we get rolling, those of you who are here for 150 to 168 East Lancaster Ave, and also the Hamilton Estate conditional use, they've pulled that off the agenda, so we will not be hearing that this evening. So, also, before we get started on the items that are remaining on the agenda, if anybody would like to make some public comment to us, that's for items that are not on the agenda this evening. Please come up, state your name if you'd like. Seeing none,
I guess
please come up.
I will. Thank you. I'm Dee Erheim. I live at 102 Luella. I'm interested in the construction on the corner of Luella and Lancaster. I assume we can leave now.
Yes, yeah, we will not be discussing that
That
tonight.
won't be discussed, and when will we hear about it?
It will be posted on the Township website. You'll be notified.
Okay.
I don't know if
Thank you
it's
very much.
next meeting or the following one,
Well,
but
thank you. I just didn't want to get up and leave and not understand.
no, we thank you for coming, and sorry for the late notice.
No, it's all right.
Make your computer easier.
Oh. All right, next order of business is approval of July 10th meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comment on that?
They look good to me.
Okay. So we're going to have a motion. I'm going to abstain, so can somebody make a motion?
Motion made.
Okay. All right, all in favor? All right, unanimous with Freeman abstaining. I was not there. Next item, application 209-751, 799 Godfrey Road. This is the Overbrook Golf Club expansion of existing golf cart building.
Good evening, Nick Canilia, representing the applicant on this matter. This is an addition to the existing structure in the middle of the campus. I'm probably all familiar with Overbrook, 131-acre site, probably the largest open space area in the township. There's really very little addition to the building footprint, very little addition to impervious coverage. It's located where the addition is going, is located several hundred feet from the road, several hundred feet, if not more than that, from various neighbors. Basically no impact at all on the neighborhood. Overbrook commenced this plan back in 2016, and it took 6-7 years to bring it to fruition, to bring it before the board. Really, this is a vertical expansion of the existing cart barn, if you know where the cart barn is. There's a connection from the cart barn to the main building, and then interior renovations that will be occurring as well. Basically, the improvements are all for the members. There's no proposal to increase membership. It is basically to make a better area for the members, space things out. Currently, some of the facilities are overutilized, and it's more to meet modernization, to meet the members' expectations and provide a more comfortable environment. As I mentioned, no increase in membership, no increase in employees. They have proceeded to shade tree, and I believe they received shade tree approval. We're requesting 2 waivers, 2 common waivers. One is preliminary final plan approval. This is just merely an addition. And secondly, not having to show any infrastructure within 500 feet. The code requires 500 feet of the property line. In this instance, everything is interior, and actually there is no outside infrastructure within 500 feet of the addition. Therefore, we're asking for a waiver for that as well. We'll have 2 people come up. One is John Hayes, the architect from Blackney Hayes. He'll give you an overview of the project and what the intent to accomplish is. And then Joe Mongaluzzi, Joe Mongaluzzi, who's the engineer, will discuss the site plan. Probably should turn them all off.
Yeah, there's a tornado warning in the area until 7, so. Yeah, shelter at the meeting.
John, you want to start it out?
Do we have images or no?
We have a USB that would be helpful. Is the IT guy here?
Here we go. Thanks, Ian.
It's hard to do this without showing you something here. Here you go. Where it is.
That's the first one. It's the top one, yep. And then go down to design overview.
Did you have the
Oh.
whole thing in there?
Yeah, I did.
Just,
Yeah. I did. There you go. It's these three.
Well, as Nick, I'm John Hayes of Blackby Hayes Architects. We've been working on a master plan for Overbrook for 7 years, I believe, almost, at this point in time. And this is the realization of that planning effort that's been going on to modernize the club and expand the facilities to accommodate the members' needs at this point in time. As Nick said, we're not increasing the membership, we're really just accommodating the existing needs within the project. What you're looking at here, this lower area is an existing cart barn that we put out there, I don't know, 7 or 8 years or maybe a little longer. And it was designed to have an overbuild go on it at a later date. At this point in time, we're realizing the overbuild, which at the next level will be a new men's locker room, a men's grill area, a deck area for the members. There is a bridge that's connecting the existing building to the cart barn expansion. In that bridge will be a new kitchen area and corridor connections to a new members grill area and bar, of which exists. The kitchen, actually, there is an existing kitchen we are relocating in here. So primarily, as Nick said, the footprint of this project is relatively small since we're building primarily on top of the existing cart barn with a small bridge that connects the two, and then the rest is, this is interior renovation, and then this porch that is extending down off the members' patio here. So that's the quick overview of where we are at this point in time, and I think that's rain. Joe, do you want to jump in here?
So like Nick said, my name's Joe Mongeluzzi. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania. I prepared either some of these drawings or the engineer under me was under my advisement. So I'm here to talk about the site work or the site development. Here's an overview of the project. Here's the cart barn right here. Here's the existing clubhouse. Here's the entrance off of Godfrey Road, comes in. So this is generally the area where we're working here. This area here is the cart barn. As you can see, it's existing. And what we're proposing is to come off the existing parking lot. We're going to saw cut. That's going to give us access to the back to the existing stormwater, which is located over here. It'll give us access all around the cart barn, and will give us access to the new patio over here. So here's the patio outside, here's the bridge, and here's the cart barn right here. So we're going to be relocating or improving the cart paths and the sidewalks around these facilities here and here. We have a little ramp over here that gets into the building. It's pretty straightforward. Like John said, I think it was back in 2014, there was an existing, this cart barn was built, or maybe a little later. There was a stormwater system put in the back. We are just going to extend it in kind, and it'll match the existing. So here's our soil and erosion. Oh. I think we lost our overhead.
Yeah, I think we lost power here.
Yep.
Yeah, I think.
How do you want to proceed, Nick?
We can go through, you want to go through review letters?
Why don't we look through the review
Yeah.
letters?
Oh, there you go.
Here we go.
Back up. Okay. So let me go back and explain some of the finer details of. So overall, we're going to have a net increase of about just under 2,600 square feet of impervious. We're disturbing around 3/4 of an acre, 32,550 square feet. And as you know, in Radnor, it's new and replaced is what the stormwater is based on, and we're around 8,546 new and replaced. We sized our stormwater system for an additional 2,500, so we're just under 8,800 square feet. So should, for some reason, we need a little bit of extra impervious area, we have 250 feet built into the stormwater system above what we need. That's pretty much it. If you would like to talk about the review letters, I'd be happy to talk about them.
Yeah, let's walk through that.
Okay, so on the review letters, I mentioned there's 2 waivers requested, the 500-foot showing everything within 500 feet, then the preliminary final approval. A couple things on Damon's letter, the traffic letter. Most of them are design type of items. For example, dimension all proposed walkways, and will provide labels with the radii. Pedestrian paths to be a minimum of 4 feet. Now, the one thing, Damon, is that they're not doing a ramp. I think my understanding is the sidewalk, so they're not actually doing a ramp on this, that it's going to be a sidewalk. So they don't need a ramp, but I don't know. The sloped walkway.
Sloped walkway, can you point to that area that's?
Sure.
So that slope walkway is right here. So it's off of the driveway, and it comes up and scissors, and you go into the building. So it's right there. Our ADA access is over in this area. I'm sorry. Our ramp is right here, the proposed ramp, the slope walkway. Our ADA access is over in this direction. That's existing, and it's going to remain.
There's another walkway by the building. Is that supposed to be a ramp, or what is, or is that just sidewalk? I was a little confused by that on the plans.
Right.
He's talking about.
Okay.
You're talking about the ramp that goes up here, and they're really not ramps. Everything we've used right now is 20-to-1, which is defined as a sloped walkway with 2% grade. And that's what we've used throughout the entire project to avoid the need for handicap ramps and the inconvenience of that.
The other 2 comments are just providing more detail, kind of design comments. As I mentioned, this is just for the members only. There is no increase in seating as a result of this. It's just going to be more spaced out. They meet the parking requirement. I believe they have in excess of about 40 spaces from the parking standpoint. Overall, on the entire campus, and in any event, this is not an increase of any seating that would require additional parking. The other comment was regarding the elevations, and we understand what the elevation would be. It can't exceed 38 feet. They asked that at the time of building permits that we indicate that is not more than 38 feet, and we will comply with that. And as well as you saw on the elevation and the photos that were shown in the beginning, you can see that this is no higher than the existing mansion building on the site. Everything else is really just a will comply. I believe most of it is just design standards. I don't know if Roger has anything that he feels that we need to address any further on it.
No, I don't think so. They're all minor design comments.
Okay, sounds good. Any comments from Steve?
Mr. Chairman, I concur with Roger. It's a relatively light review letter. They're going to comply, so nothing on our end.
Okay. Commissioner, comment?
Just as a matter of a reference matter, the applicant will be going before design review on Wednesday.
Okay, very good. So I think a motion here would be appropriate to recommend preliminary final pending. I think we want to confirm elevation, that it's no taller than 38 feet, which you indicated.
Do we have that somewhere? Well, we will do that, yeah. We'll
Yeah.
comply with it anyway.
And assuming that you will comply and everything else.
Yes.
Can I get a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All right. Good
Thank
luck. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right. Okay, next up is application 209-755, 26 Wentworth. And this is a land development. The application indicates proposed 2 residential buildings on 2 lots from 1 lot. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Timothy Davis, representing the applicant from Shock Group LLC for 26 Wentworth Lane, 2-lot minor subdivision in the Garrett Hill section of the township. The applicant is currently applying for preliminary. There was some confusion on one of the review letters that it was preliminary final. And so our Gilmore and Associates review letter was reviewed as a preliminary. The Gannett Fleming was reviewed as preliminary final. So I did bring the original application just to clarify that it is only a preliminary application that we are here for today.
Yeah, for those of you playing along at home, the review letters were extensive and probably inappropriate for where you are in the stage of this process.
Yes, we have not designed the stormwater system, just to be clear.
Sounds good.
Okay, to introduce the project, the existing 15,000 square foot lot at 26 Wentworth Lane is proposed to be subdivided into 2 approximately equally sized 7,500 square foot lots. On each lot, we are proposing 2,000 to 2,250 square feet of impervious on the lots with a single family detached dwelling with 2 units total, 1 on each lot. The existing conditions on the lot basically are just a blank lot. It was demolished a few years ago, and currently there is only a small bit of stone that is left on the lot. There's no existing structure or primary use of the lot as it currently stands. The vicinity plan for the area, there is fire service at the end of the block for that, and we will provide a fire hydrant plan. I know that was in part of the final comments that were on the Gannett Fleming letter. We will provide that as part of our final plan development. So the existing concrete pad that is there and driveway is proposed to be removed, as well as 2 of the trees that are on the lot. We will be providing replacement trees for those 2 trees. Those have not been designed as of yet. A landscape architect will be consulted for that. And we will be appearing in front of the Shade Tree Commission upon final plan submission. The proposed development is a single detached house with 2 units. The unit on Lot 2 is slightly bigger than on Lot 1 with a common stormwater system in the back. The current conditions on the site have slight surface ponding. We are proposing to mitigate that with some better soils. Again, go to some of the final plan comments that are on there. There were very good soils about 4 feet below the surface with between 12 and 4 inches per hour in run rates, which is very good for this part of the township. So the stormwater is, we are confident that we'll be able to meet the stormwater requirements as part of the final plan for in there, as well as all the erosion control requirements that the township requires. The applicant is requesting 2 waivers currently, and then there is one additional comment that was brought up that I want to discuss with the township. The first waiver is a waiver from the section 255.27C1 to maintain the existing right-of-way width of 33 feet instead of the required 60 feet for local streets. The existing street on Wentworth Lane is an offset street where the street is not symmetrical as it goes down the street, and we are on the encumbered side of that street lot. On the vicinity plan, there are additional houses shown on our side. They use the front yards as parking. There is no sidewalk on our side, and that is for the second waiver to maintain the cartway width as well of 22.25 feet instead of the required 28 feet, maintaining the current width of Wentworth Lane as it goes down.
Excuse me, not to interrupt, but, so Wentworth Lane / Summit Terrace is wider just past your project?
Yes, correct.
And you're gonna meet that
Correct.
existing width?
Yes.
Because it doesn't look like that's what's reflected on the plan. It looks like it's about a foot in following existing Wentworth / Summit Terrace, and then it gets wider right when you get past it at the house that starts Wentworth Lane. And we're requesting that road width where Wentworth Lane starts out to the end of this property continue with that width.
I believe the applicant is agreeable to that.
Thank you.
Confirmed, the applicant is agreeable to that.
Okay, very
We
good.
will include that with the final plans.
How are we phrasing that, Mr. Narsini? We'll maintain roadway width to what?
We'll match roadway width of Wentworth Lane just south of the project. Are we south?
Along the entire frontage.
Yes, thank you.
And just to clarify, that's a 24-foot cartway width at that point.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks.
thank you, Damon.
And while I've already interrupted, and you were talking about ponding, so where the existing parking lot of the nursery is, I'm not sure what that's called, right at that interface where the parking lot of the nursery meets this lot, there's ponding. I think there's like logs there now. I'm not seeing contour lines that would show how you address that.
In that
So
area,
right about where the tree, so the tree that's remaining on the front of the site, right in that area, there's ponding. Water comes off that parking lot and ponds there, but we're not seeing contour lines as to how that could be addressed, other than I know you're saying the ground perks really well there.
So not right there. There is better perk in the backyard. We are proposing to take the surface water in that area into an inlet in the front yard, and we can confirm with spot grading that the water is to flow to that inlet. And then we are piping that to the backyard where we have the better soils.
And we would see that on the final plan submission.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, very good.
While we're on that subject, though, Steve, when Rockwell was before us on the same property, there was a lot of resident concern about water going out of the back of the property and affecting neighbors on the street behind Wentworth. So my question would be, are you guys going to contain the stormwater on the property?
Yes. Through the stormwater testing, we are confident we are able to comply with all township infiltration and rate control requirements.
Okay.
Any other commissioner comments? I just want to recognize Commissioner Farhi. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm here for another matter, but I do have a question. Garrett Hill is the ward in which I'm a commissioner in. I actually live in Garrett Hill. Just one question, and you're saying, and then I'm going to ask, I guess, Peter and Steve to kind of follow up. So you're saying that there's going to be a shared system. Is it going to be on both the properties or just one of the properties?
We are still working that out with the developer
Okay.
of whether there's an HOA
So
over that.
I guess my question is, and I guess legal or engineering is going to, if they're not now, 5, 10 years, 15 years down the road, there's a failure and it is, I mean, there's not a homeowners, they're just two houses. There's not a homeowners, there's nothing. If there's a failure, how does that work of who is going to fix it? One resident may have enough money, one may not have enough money, and does it fall back on the township? Is there a lien? I don't know, Peter or Steve, it's more
Yeah,
legal than anything, if you
This
could.
is, yeah, I was going to raise this for two reasons. One, your worst-case scenarios, I'm not sure our zoning allows this setup. We do allow a duplex with a 0 side yard, but that's a building that's specifically divided right along the property line. You're proposing a facility, a structure that's not divided on the property line. It crosses over the property line. I think worst-case scenario, and I'm not saying definitely this is the case, but I think worst-case scenario, if you want to do this, you need a variance. At the very minimum, as Commissioner Farhi brought up, you're going to need to denote an easement area. We're going to need to have an easement over that. We're going to need to have an operation and maintenance agreement between the two property owners with enforcement powers to the township to ensure that if you get a variance, even if you get a variance or if it's decided you don't need one, that we can be sure that it's going to be properly maintained, and if it's not, the township has the ability to step in and go after both property owners if that's the case. But yeah, in looking through that plan, I am concerned that it's not allowed under zoning.
Okay.
But
We can-
definitely, we're going to need to have an easement area denoted, and my office will prepare, it's going to be a condition of approval that you agree to an O&M agreement covering that whole system, make sure it does work and both property owners are on the hook for it.
We can separate those. The reason that the design choice was made was to save some of the trees in the page left corner of there. There's some significant tree root. We can move the system over there and provide replacement trees for those impacted trees to separate the system. So we can do that.
Okay.
It would just require some tree removal, but the applicant is willing to replace those trees.
All right, good.
Is-
Even if you do separate the system, we probably would still want to see an easement over and obviously still have an O&M agreement on each of the two systems.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Is this an issue that we need to decide now?
No, not at all.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other commissioner comment?
I have could you bring the aerial map back? I see that the proposed building, and if you could point to it, just for the sake of everyone here, right there, is there any way that the footprint of that new proposed structure can be designed in such a way that it maintains a street wall along Wentworth? Because I see that the houses all follow a certain street wall. Some have porches and some don't, but, this proposed building really juts out quite a bit.
I'll leave that to the developer. I believe the intent was to maximize the backyard for the future residents of there. The current houses are on the smaller side. They do maintain the backyard. However, the front yard and included parking, where the current houses utilize a front parking area for off-street parking, we are including that parking within the building itself and providing those parking spaces interior. That would be eliminated if we moved it back.
So in summary, are there any other commissioner comments?
Yes. So on the lot, you will see a light dashed line interior marked as garage. In the garage bay, there is a full-size car that will be interior to the building, as well as a half width, or a half length, I should say, overhang that will cover half of the car. That will be outside of the closed car garage, so that both cars will be approximately in line with the building itself. Currently, the neighboring houses utilize front parking pads that take the place of the sidewalk area. This proposes to move both parking spaces into the principal building setback out of that front yard area.
And you're asking for a waiver on sidewalk, right? I think I
Correct.
heard that.
Yes.
Okay, got it. There is a sidewalk, for the record, across the street, so.
So what happens if the occupants use the garage as like storage or another type of use? Then where will the cars park? How close are those cars to the street?
So the first car would be within the principal setback. The second car would, as currently shown, would be stacked in front of it. Still, I would say about 10 to 15 feet off of the right-of-way.
So the car isn't going to be in the front yards, neither car would, the car won't be in the front yard setback.
Correct.
So one in the garage, one not in the garage, but it still won't be in the front yard setback.
Correct.
Steve, as I remember, the Wayne Walk project on Maplewood, we restricted the use of the garages to cars only on that project?
Correct. The solicitor had deed restricted that garage so that it couldn't be converted to dwelling space of any type.
Is that something we should do on this project?
Yes.
And this solicitor says yes also.
All right. Got it.
That's agreeable to the applicant.
Anybody else?
The driveway doesn't work, at least,
Yes, so that is
you're
the...
gonna separate that?
So, yes, we are going to propose a separation between the McGrath strip with the final plan. The one item I did want to bring to the board for discussion was section 150, the section that says the driveways must be 5 feet off of any side yard setback. For attached dwellings that do allow adjoined garages, even if we separated the actual driveways in the front yard, there would still be a portion that would be within that 5 yard setback. We would apply for a waiver as part of the final plan from that section to allow the driveways, while separated, to be within 5 feet of the side yard.
So they'd be 10 feet away from each other?
They would not. They would likely be 4 feet away from each other. We would ask for a waiver from the 10 feet separation down to 4 feet.
Okay, you're not asking for that today.
We are not asking for that today.
Okay, gotcha. I would urge you to review the prior plans and how this board reacted to them before you get too far along in the process. With respect to the deed restriction on the garages, I don't think we're there yet either, so, anybody else? How about we hear from?
I just think there's too many things missing from the plan to make, and to apply for preliminary. I wouldn't think so.
Well, they're not asking for preliminary final, and we'll see them again.
But they're asking for a preliminary.
Yeah, this is more like a sketch to Commissioner Kunda's point. So
it's not a preliminary.
We're allowing them some latitude to proceed with dimensional drawings and to go further along in the development process. But there are, to your point, Commissioner Varenhorst, there are a lot of things missing, for sure.
But I guess I don't understand. So what is the application for today? A sketch plan, or is that?
Peter?
Can you say, I have trouble understanding your question.
What's the application? Is it for preliminary? Is it for a sketch plan review?
I believe the application is a preliminary plan application.
Okay. I wouldn't think it's ready.
I agree with Steve.
I agree
This
with
isn't
Steve.
clean enough for even preliminary.
So would the applicant be preferred that we tabled it or that we denied it?
Prefer table.
Okay.
Before you vote, I have one more issue I want to bring up. You have an existing lawsuit against you, or your client does, from Rockwell. I think we need to have some comfort level as to what's happening with that lawsuit, since it pertains specifically to this property and who owns it. And this is something, moving forward, eventually, we're going to need to say, hey, you need to prove clear title to this property. And if there's a lawsuit out there and there's a lis pendens on the property, that's going to be a problem. So you guys, you're going to need to address that sooner rather than later.
Understood.
And I'm not saying Rockwell's right or you're right, or it's just, it's something you're going to need to deal with before we're going to be able to move this plan along.
This is the first time hearing of it, so.
Okay, sorry.
So we'll also need an extension to that effect, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like we're going to make a motion to table.
Yes.
And we'll see you again. So I'm going to make the motion in the matter of 26 Wentworth. The motion is to table. All in favor? Unanimous. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for
And
your
good
time.
luck. Okay. So I'm going to turn to old business. So this is a matter that we heard at a last meeting, which Commissioner Golis chaired. This is the matter of the Garrett Hill Outdoor Dining Ordinance 2023-03. And I want to just lean into this a little bit before we get started. From the standpoint of our work as a planning commission, the Garrett Hill Dining Ordinance, I think it's unique because we're not discussing something in a vacuum. We're not pontificating from the dais, so to speak. But we're talking about something the community had in place for 3 years. So we're not just talking about the potential impact of the ordinance. We actually have a track record here. So we're able to examine objectively and I would say retrospectively the impact that it has had. As a planning commission, I want to set the table that we're looking at this potential ordinance through the lens of safety, welfare, and health of the neighborhood. And we're advising the Board of Commissioners as to what our thoughts are as they look to vote on this ordinance shortly. So for the purpose of chronology of this matter, this was introduced in front of the Board of Commissioners on May 22nd. We then heard it on June 10th, as I mentioned, and then we voted to table it pending additional information. And in the meanwhile, we didn't just sit there. We reviewed the testimony that we heard on June 10th. We also received several letters, including those in opposition from individual residents, as well as through Commissioner Farhi, who's been a vocal proponent of the ordinance. And we've examined those letters. We also looked at the ones which were received most recently. To mention Rick and Terry Baker's letter, as well as Tony Bailey. They were both in opposition, for the record. And we also received a letter from Roberta Winters, who encouraged us to examine some of the elements of the comments that were in opposition. So for the purpose of organizing our work tonight, I just want to take the liberty to summarize the countervailing opinions on this ordinance, and then we can have a further discussion and perhaps take a vote. So the opposition to this ordinance largely centers around 4 points. So number one, potential noise and light pollution as caused by the diners themselves. There's also potential negative impact on neighborhood street parking. Perhaps increased vermin due to serving and storing food outdoors during the period of outdoor dining. And the fourth would be the overall fairness of having reduced setback requirements for restaurants in Guerin Hill vis-a-vis any other zoning district in the township. There may be others. We'll, if you're here for that as residents, we'll get a chance to talk to you about those. And the arguments for passage of this ordinance, primarily spearheaded by Commissioner Farhi, who's here, have been that there's a couple of points here. Garrett Hill is a unique neighborhood. It allows for denser development as well as closer proximity to commercially zoned lots that may otherwise occur in other neighborhoods. There's another argument that states that in the 3 years that outdoor dining has been allowed, there have been very few complaints by residents. Also, restaurants in Garrett Hill want to be on a level playing field. These are neighborhood small businesses, and when their patrons want to experience outdoor dining, they can't do that in Garrett Hill. The other argument for this ordinance is that the ordinance amendment is limited to the GHCR, Conestoga Road zoning district, and will potentially only benefit a handful of restaurants, two of which are Garrett Hill Ale House and Conestoga Pizza. The other two restaurants in that zoning districts do not benefit, if this ordinance becomes fact. They would have to go in front of the zoning hearing board to get relief because they will be non-compliant on parking. Fifth argument for the ordinance is that it is, unlike in any other district, it's parking neutral, and that outdoor dining in Garrett Hill would perhaps improve walkability in the neighborhood. In addition to all of that, the Delaware County Planning Commission also decided to opine on the ordinance, and they made several points. So number one, they recommended that if the ordinance became law, that outdoor dining should cease should the kitchen close early. They also had a comment, which I don't think was brought up by anybody, but that smoking and loitering should be prohibited in the outdoor dining areas, which makes sense, both during and after outdoor dining hours. They also spoke about permit renewal and that the actual track record of the restaurant should be weighed in granting or denying an outdoor dining permit if the ordinance becomes law. And then finally, they also wanted us to take another look at setbacks township-wide. So for example, they mentioned that perhaps a setback requirement of 500 feet in the side yard and the rear yard was perhaps excessive, and perhaps the proposed ordinance setback requirement of 50 feet was too liberal. So they asked us to re-examine that. And 500 feet is over 1.6 football fields away. Perhaps they're right. At a minimum, they did have the opinion that if outdoor dining becomes possible in Garrett Hill, there should be some sort of a buffer of outdoor dining area from the residential neighborhoods. And perhaps, although I do think that they were maybe confused, additional parking should be provided by the restaurant if they reduce their parking in favor of outdoor dining. I think if we're talking about a non-compliant, a restaurant that reduces its parking and it's already non-conforming for parking, they would have to actually get relief for that through the zoning hearing board process. That being said, and I know there's a lot here, but I thought it was valuable to summarize both sides of the argument. I'd like to hear, now that we've had an additional month to take a look at this, I'd like to hear from other commissioners on where we stand, and then we can hear from the public, and perhaps we can take a vote and give the BOC our recommendation. Sound good?
Just one point of clarification. The County Planning Commission made a typo. It's a 100-foot setback elsewhere, not 500 feet.
So I believe our ordinance has two setback requirements, one for front yard and one for side yard and rear yard. If you can take another gander.
It has, under setbacks, it has 100 feet within a property line for property line of a single-family or two-family detached or semi-detached dwelling unit located completely or partially within a residential zoning district. That's 100 feet. And then it has a 100-foot setback of a property line of an unimproved lot located completely or partially within a residential zoning district. So unless, and then, oh, here we go. Okay.
It's there.
I
right.
see it. Yeah, I've been looking at this, trying to figure this out. Thank you, MJ.
No worries. Glad you're looking at it. All right. Without further ado, let's hear from our commissioners. I think perhaps it would be good to go down the line. Commissioner Wu?
You mentioned that one of the pros or the reasons for this outdoor dining ordinance is that it will improve walkability. Could you explain how this would improve walkability? Because in my due diligence in the month in the interim, the one thing that I kept thinking about is how outdoor dining will impinge on the right-of-way in Conestoga especially, which is not that walkable. There isn't much sidewalk there. And I'm just concerned that tables and chairs would actually make that even harder and push people out onto the street, particularly people in wheelchairs or strollers.
So I think this is a great question for Mr. Norsini. So I'm not sure if you heard the question.
Yeah, so I don't believe the sidewalk in front of, say, Flip and Bailey's is adequate for the outdoor dining. When they had it, it was in their parking lot on the corner of Williams and Conestoga, and as the chair noted, to do that after the COVID, they would need zoning hearing board relief. But the last time we looked at this, there is not adequate width to have tables and the 5-foot walkway.
There was not adequate width.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. So what we're talking about on outdoor dining is that if they can't place the tables in the walkway, then they would have to do it in some other third area. Obviously, if it either side yard or rear yard, if they take up parking, then I believe there would be a calculation on whether they're compliant as to parking and seating.
Okay. To me, this feels like an overkill of an ordinance that really just only applies to one business, which is Flip and Bailey's. And we're trying to apply it to everyone in a district.
Actually, Flip and Bailey's would not benefit from this ordinance without zoning hearing board review. So when we looked at it, Garrett Ale House and Conestoga Pizza would be eligible for this.
Okay.
Flippin' Bailey's, they just, they're non-conforming with parking. And that's, at this point, that's the only place where they could put it.
Okay.
Mr. Norsini, am I?
That's correct, sir. So, Conestoga style pizza, a couple very small tables for like 2 people would give them, could possibly give them the width. If the Garrett Hill Ale House would want to, I guess it's on the other side of their building, on the Garrett Avenue side, they couldn't do it out front, and as the chair said, Flippin' Bailey's would have to get relief.
And I think exit 13. Obviously, we're stipulating current businesses, current use, and obviously if the business use changed. It is admittedly, GHCR is a very small district.
Are any of,
But there's other stores there, or other small little restaurants. Was it the Italian restaurant, Town?
So when Patty Kaufman looked at these, other than those 2 that we noted, so there was an adequate sidewalk width for the one across the street. The exit 13 or whatever that's called, they don't currently have adequate sidewalk width. Now, that's not saying that restaurants can't go for relief or can't try different things or come in with a permit, but just on the look that our acting zoning officer did, there's only a few places that could do it right off the bat, should possibly this be passed.
MJ, can I jump in? Sorry. Mr. Kim, I'll answer your question. So, as of now, no restaurant is on a public, no restaurant would have a table on a public sidewalk. So, when you look at Flippin' Bailey's, it's currently in their parking lot, as Engineer Norsini said. If you look at the Garrett Hill Ale House across the street, there's a tiny little area. Sometimes they have vegetables there. Sometimes you kind of walk down some steps to get in. You may have to build that out. There may be adequate room or not, but that's not on the sidewalk. Exit 13, if they had it, they do, as of now, certainly have an issue when it comes to parking, but if they did put it in where their parking spots are, similar to how Flippin' Bailey's is, they could do that. It's not going to impede anybody on a wheelchair or anything. It's all on private property. And even with that said, unfortunately, I think All Seasons is closing, and I think that one of the reasons is to annex that property for that restaurant. I don't know that for certain, but I believe that you need more than 4 spots to operate that restaurant. So, and Conestoga Pizza, they've had tables outside. I don't know if something that they want to do, and I know Antonella's wanted to do that as well. So, and when it comes to Antonella's, there's a trophy store next door. It could always remain a trophy store. They could buy it. They could do whatever they want with it. So, it's not necessarily benefiting one business or one business owner. I think we have to look at, what is it, rising tide lifts all boats. And when it comes to a business district, which, I wish it was as successful as, say, downtown Wayne, I think that any help to level that playing field, as I said, would be a tremendous help to the businesses as well as the residents. So when it comes to walkability, people will walk there. If there's outside dining, it's a great little place to go with your family and to sit outside if it was a nice night, not like tonight. And it's a local destination. And it's not as much as a regional destination. I don't think people from Malvern are going to say, hey, let's go to Flippin' Bailey's, although I would love it if they did, or to Exit 13. But it's a neighborhood establishment, and I'd say a good 50% of the customers there, they do wind up walking there. So I hope that answers your question.
Matt?
Yeah. Can I?
David, are you?
One question I have is with regards to hours of operation for outside dining. I know we discussed it on a sort of like macro level last meeting, and as well as reading all the various different letters that some of the constituents of you, Mr. Farhi, and folks that live in Garrett Hill have wrote that I read today and yesterday. I think some which are, in my opinion, very reasonable concerns. But I think the big thing is, for me, if I was living there, and from my own personal history of Garrett Hill and living not too far from there for many, many years, is basically hours of operation. So where did you come out since our prior meeting? Has there been any further thought of restricting the hours to something a little bit more manageable for a neighborhood with a lot of young families?
Sure. Is that, if that's directed
I'm-
toward me, but that's definitely an ongoing conversation that the residents and the business owners don't want to have, people eating dinner there at 11 o'clock at night. That's not what this is about. This is about families. This is about keeping these restaurants more family-oriented as opposed to what they were before. Some of them have been known to be more college-oriented. So when you kind of make that threshold where you're having family dining, some of the specials I know are family specials, buy one, get one hamburgers. That's not for adult, well, it could be, but it's a lot of times it's for kids and whatnot. So I think that really helps the theme, and it helps the brand of some of these restaurants where they are more family-oriented. Now, when it comes to time, I mean, I'm fine with it, and I've said before, I don't know, have 8 o'clock. I mean, we'll come up with something and talk to these.
But,
8
I mean,
o'clock is the last seating, and you're.
But we're asking, I mean, in all fairness
Sure.
to the process, in all fairness to our time and getting this thing
What's
done,
up?
as kind of expressed, maybe not a little inappropriate way, but some of my frustration that we weren't able to kind of move this thing forward last meeting. But now we are asking to opine on something, and this is frankly a fairly large material point of this ordinance. So I'm not willing to vote on this thing, or if you're asking me to vote for it, without having set hours, or basically put those hours in the document, the ordinance we're asking for, that's a huge material consideration.
Then I will make a motion if this, whatever this.
Let me take this back. So Commissioner Nat, that's definitely noted, and I think we as a planning commission can put that stipulation in. Whether the Board of Commissioners adopts that or not, some of the numbers, some of the hours that I've heard about is last seating at 8, outdoor dining suspended at 9:30. Currently, the hours would be
I'm
until
just asking
10.
for something to be in there that we as a board can react to. I can't react to something that's not in that document.
Sure.
We're being asked to.
So the ordinance is given to us procedurally to look at. We can either approve it in its entirety, we could, or recommend for approval in its entirety, we could recommend that we deny it, or we can make changes, and I think it's most appropriate if we were to recommend approval, to stipulate something else other than the 10 p.m. cutoff as it exists today in that ordinance.
I was just under the assumption that from prior meeting until today, some sort of an arrangement, some sort of an agreement would be made, or some sort of, we kind of spoke about this.
That's up for us to decide today.
Let me just make 2 suggestions then. Sure. For me, I think like 8 o'clock, 8:30, last seating, and then you're in there by 9, 9:15, whatever is one thing. The other thing that you could also put in there as well as, and I don't think that it's the case, but for your peace of mind, the peace of mind of the neighbors, that like if you go out, you can't just, you have to order food, or you can't order just hard alcohol. So if you had something like that, you'd have to order an appetizer or a meal. I don't think people are going to go there doing shots, but I do understand your concern that there's not anything in there, and I think that putting those two in, in the ordinance, I think if that gives you peace of mind and some of the neighbors peace of mind, I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker for anybody. So I would be comfortable adding those two items if you wanted to amend that ordinance and then vote on it.
Commissioner
Thank
Nat,
you.
are you suggesting would you be willing to suggest a time for us to?
I'm thinking somewhere that the last seating would be somewhere around 7:30, somewhere in the 7 o'clock hour, 7:30, and then this way, everyone's gone by like 9 o'clock, everyone has to kind of finish up. And maybe from a seasonality, you may be able to extend that a little bit from a seasonality, perhaps, but I'm sensitive to the fact is that there's, you have some homes right behind the parking lot there. I go there on Wednesday nights. Every Wednesday night, I'm usually there in the wintertime. Spring, it's Wednesday night is half price on hamburgers. My friends who I play tennis with were there, but upstairs you also have a lot of Villanova students who come in. Thankfully, they all take Uber, but they have a Trivial Pursuit night or whatever, and there's a lot of people upstairs. So I'm just sensitive of the ingress egress going into that place for the neighbors, and somehow we can't do anything by right to that, with exception of if there is related noise issues. I'm sure people understandably will call up the Radnor police and make a complaint about that. But for me, as sitting here as a board, to understand about outdoor dining, and I like the idea, don't get me wrong, I like the idea, and I think it's great for the community and everything that you said, Mr. Farhi, or Commissioner Farhi, but I am sensitive to the folks that live in, down that street.
I think 8 o'clock would be reasonable. I mean, it gets pretty, when you're in the summer hours where it's after and it stays late till 9:30.
Yeah, some sort of
But
seasonality.
but I think 8 o'clock is good, and you got to move if you're not done by 9:15, they'll find a table for you inside and you finish your meal that way. I think that's reasonable. I agree with you.
All right, thank you.
Can I,
Commissioner Nat, good? Okay. Commissioner Golis.
Yeah, I have a few things to say. I feel like from a higher level, approving this ordinance in its form, setback form, is a mistake for the township because it's spot zoning. I saw a lot of spot zoning when I covered planning in Philadelphia, and a lot of folks in Philadelphia who made law based on who they represented and what place they represented. But it didn't do the city any good overall because it started to wear down what a comprehensive plan would do for Radnor. And I don't like it. So I don't like it on the spot zoning. Even if we went to 100 feet, even if we made it equitable, 100 feet would eliminate any possibility of outdoor dining in Garrett Hill. So even if we said, well, let's make it all equal in Radnor, that doesn't work for Garrett Hill. So, and I'm all for making it equal. I also I don't think it's a must-have deal for economic survival of the restaurants. I don't think I'm not convinced outdoor dining will make or break anybody in Garrett Hill. And the one other thing that I've heard that there's a very large petition in Garrett Hill against this ordinance, and it's not being represented to us. And that annoys me, because if there's 100 people in Garrett Hill who have signed a petition and we're not seeing it, I think that there's something wrong with that. I'm really not happy about that. And if I'm wrong, if there's no such petition, I apologize. But I've heard that there is. So,
Commissioner
can I
Golis.
comment on that? So, in that same vein, we're sitting here trying to figure this out. I don't know if there's any owners of the businesses here with a site plan showing where the tables go and how it relates to the neighborhoods. I'm not sure why we're figuring it out. Why aren't they here with a presentation like everyone else does and show us how this actually works and how it actually impacts the neighborhood? I mean, I'm all for I'd love to eat out, I'd love to sit outside, and eat, and then that's great.
So
But why aren't they making an argument for
Hold on,
it?
but that's exactly the point. They're not here, right?
They're
And-
no,
and-
they're
no, no,
not.
no,
They
but-
weren't
and-
here last
no, no,
month
no,
either.
They're not, and
No.
that's why it's not spot zoning, okay? It's not one person, it's not Villanova saying, change the laws so we can put the CICD here. There are a bunch of different restaurants, all mom and pops, that want to do this. So what one restaurant does, right, it's gonna have to be, it's what, you can't, I mean, you could have one restaurant saying, we want to do this, another this, and you're not going to come here to decipher that. What we're trying to do is roll back what this Garrett Hill overlay is. And I could argue that that was spot zoning, but I won't. Spot zoning based upon the office, the corporate center there. But these are all mom and pops. I don't see this as spot zoning one bit. So it's going to be up to the individual businesses to decide where it makes sense and whether or not they need relief. But for us to say, let's bring them here and say, what do you have? We don't know. I mean, you heard the, right on Wentworth, right behind where exit 13 is. They didn't have it. The plans change. So you need to allow for them to have it. And then when you deal with the minutia, wrong term, but the specifics, the devil's in the detail, then they may have to come to planning or zoning or the board for some kind of waiver or relief.
Commissioner Gullis, you're good?
I'm done.
All right.
I don't agree with that. They're either the streets can handle it or they can't handle it, you know? And if they can handle it, then show us how it
Well,
works.
I mean, they can. We've had it for 3 years, and there's nothing, and a bunch of the restaurants tried it. Some of them may
Yeah,
want to
no,
do it, some
I've
of them
been-
may not, but there's not some conspiracy that all these restaurants are saying, we have to have this. Some of them want to use it, some of them don't.
But going back to the other commissioner's point, if they came in here, why not memorialize the fact is like where they can put the tables?
So that actually was done several years ago. It was.
But
I mean, maybe if you want them here, I know, Mr. Kim, you said that you wanted to reach out and talk to some of those restaurants. I don't know if you had time to. Based upon that, I thought that at the last meeting, several of you said that you were going to try to reach out, and I even offered to make the introductions, and no one called me to set that up. I gladly would have done it. You brought it up. I said I would have made the introductions. I would have walked you around the town and show you, and no one reached out. So
Well, I did my own personal due diligence through that area, and this is why I feel like this. I don't know why we're discussing it in this manner, because what I'm hearing from you is that this is maybe 8 seats. I'm not even sure. Like, I want to see a plan and just show me, you know, how this can be. And if this was done 2 years ago, do we have a record of that from 2 years ago?
So, yeah, so the plans changed, but
Okay.
But the major issue is the setbacks of the parking. The parking is going to be net neutral. That's been determined, okay? The parking will be net neutral. So then it comes back to the setbacks. It come back to noise, light, and whatnot. Based upon my conversations with Superintendent Flanagan, there've just been a handful of complaints, probably nothing out of the ordinary. It's not three standard deviations against the mean, probably similar to what Wayne would be or anything else. So the issues that I see are the setbacks, if it is noisy. And I haven't seen that. I haven't heard that. I mean, I get emails all the time for things that you won't believe, like where's the lid to my garbage can, okay? So when I don't get email saying it's too noisy, I would assume that it's fine. So,
But one of my points is that if you have a plan, that you memorialize what the plan is. So going back to your point, you could have a setback of 50 feet, 100 feet, or 500 feet. If you have a setback of 500 feet with 30 tables, that's going to produce a lot of noise. If you have a setback of 100 feet with maybe like 10 tables, or a maximum of these 10 tables or 30 tables, or even less, that's going to have some sort of a control over the noise. It goes in hand with the setback. There's going to be, in order for anything this to happen, in my mind, and looking at this pragmatically, there has to be a compromise. So the compromise is obviously, if the township is in agreement of 50 feet or 100 feet setback, whatever that's going to your point, or to get anything done in order to satisfy the residents' issues, legitimate issues they may have, there has to be some sort of a compromise. Otherwise,
Well, I agree that there have to be compromise, and I've worked for several years to try to find compromise, and that ship, unfortunately.
But as
Sorry,
just as a I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if I lose my,
Got it.
don't
No,
spit out
I
my
do
thought,
too.
I lose it.
I'm thinking
I
9
lose
thoughts
it
ahead
too.
of you. Got
But
it.
if you're able to have a plan with basically, with the number of tables, where the tables are going to be, by the owner, I think that would be very
Sure,
helpful
but-
for us to.
But that's to Skip's point, that this is not any kind of spot zoning. These restaurants, if you want to talk to them and say, hey, right now, do you want to have outdoor dining? And they may say, yeah, this is it, we'd put it here. Or they may say, not really in our plans right now. That stuff is going to change. So you could have, just hear me out here, you could have these plans, and then there's a new owner, because Antonella's changed owners, or something along those lines where they're may or may not do it, but these are up to the individual business owners. So if you want to have all the business owners come here and say, what's my plan? Again, I was happy to walk the business district with you and say, hey, is this something that you're looking at? If it is, but to say, well, where are they now, when I feel that we've had ample opportunity to go through that exercise.
And I remember you offered that, to be fair with the process. But what I'm just caught up on, if you have a plan, you're able to memorialize location, number of tables, okay? As well as, we'll put the time of operations on the side here. But there's a process. So if Flip and Billy says hypothetically, we're going to have 10 tables here, and the tables are going to be located right here in this carve-out area. And all of a sudden they said, you know what, we either need more tables, or we want to change the configuration, and the configuration is going to go more towards the back of their parking lot rather than on the side, right? Why can't they just come part of the
Mr. Norsini, I think if you could guide us how this would work conceptually, because the way that this ordinance works is not in the way that y'all are describing it. They have to apply. And then the township then would have to look at the plan, where are they applying to put these chairs and tables, and they have to rule on it. Mr. Norsini, could you give us a lay of the land?
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. And Mr. Nat, so the chair is correct. So we don't tell an establishment this is what you can do. They make application. We would review it. Let's say they wanted to put tables on the sidewalk. So we review it for the width of the table, and is there the clear space that's needed, minimum space that's needed for people to walk. At that point, we would either deny the application or approve the application. If it's denied, we would tell them why it's denied. Similarly, and if it was in a, X yard, we would check the setbacks again. So the way the application process works is an applicant, a restaurant, comes to the township, fills out an application, says, this is what I wish to do. We then review it based on that. We don't turn it around and say, you can only do 4 tables. We just review what they provide. And we would tell them where their shortcomings are, but like, you can't put any tables on the sidewalk. There is no room. That's an easy one, right? They may need zoning relief. They may not, and we check, so even in outdoor dining, if it's an area of outdoor dining, the building code requirements for the distance between the tables, the aisle widths, that still all applies. Okay. That doesn't go anywhere, and that's the application process versus saying you can have X tables, because they may not be able to have X tables on a building code basis because the tables would be too close.
Commissioner Kunda?
Steve, I'm kind of glad you came back in the room. In the interim between that meeting and tonight, I had asked for a very rough approximation of a yield study of the existing restaurants, front yards, just a ballpark number,
So
not a
we're-
hard and fast
So,
number.
Mr. Kunde, we would be very hesitant to do so solely based on what I had just said. Like, we're not as granular on a review to actually place tables, look at aisle widths, number of seats, things like that. So that's really flips back to that application. What I can tell you, Conestoga style pizza, you're not getting a lot of tables there, right? Flippin' Bailey's, what they had behind those orange barriers, my predecessor, that was through COVID, so I'm assuming what they had was adequate. The ale house is different. There's a setback that has to be met. They can meet that, but I don't know how many tables they can fit in there based on those aisle widths and, ADA requirements and things like that. So I'm real hesitant to do that deep a dive. All I do know is that some places wouldn't qualify. We talked about the sidewalk in front of Flippin' Bailey's. That wouldn't make it. The sidewalk in front of, I guess it's exit 13, that wouldn't make it. Now, as the commissioner said, could they try to do it with their parking and go to zoning hearing board? I don't know. So Flippin' Bailey's or any restaurant could go for relief, which could increase what they wanted to do, or it could be less. So I don't have a number, and I wouldn't want to put that number out there.
Yeah, that's unfortunate that we can't reach a ballpark number. But the setback issue is important to me. I don't understand why we have the 50-foot proposal here and everywhere else in the township it's 100. There's lots of small, tight, narrow areas that the setback is 100 feet primarily, and here it's suddenly 50. That project we just saw that we tabled, they're probably less than 50 to Flippin' Bailey right now from the property line. So I've been listening to the residents who do come forward, who actually come to the meetings, and I haven't heard, as opposed to many a time over the last 12 or 15 years that I've been on this commission, there have been both sides represented at meetings. People would come forward and say, I would like to see this, I would appreciate this change. Haven't heard that a single time. Everybody that comes to this meeting is opposed.
I'd be very surprised to see anyone who, even though they appreciate outdoor dining, who lives next to a restaurant would want it right next door to them. I think that's probably a foregone conclusion. But with respect to Flippin' Bailey's, no, I'll withdraw that. Commissioner Kunde, you're good? Okay.
Actually, I wondered in my head just a moment ago, do they have two front yards? Because they're sort of a corner property. Stephen?
I'd have to look into that, Commissioner Kunde.
Commissioner Vines.
So as far as the setback goes, Mr. Norsini, it's a 50-foot setback between the outdoor dining, not from the building or the property, from the outdoor dining location to another property, is that right?
From the ordinance, a 50-foot setback, however, shall be required in the GHCR district between the outdoor dining area and the property line of any adjacent single-family dwelling.
Okay. So to the extent that Flippin' Bailey's was doing it on that side property, wherever their outdoor dining ends, there's 50 feet between that and the next private property.
There is one exception to that. If the property in question, the residential properties across the street, the setbacks don't apply. But yes, it's 50 feet to the property line from the dining area. And I assume we're using the furthest point of the dining area, the closest to the opposing property line. Just, you know, I'm not a sound engineer, but I'm assuming that we're looking at human speech as being something that we're protecting the residents from, which is typically measured at 60 decibels. With 50 feet away, assuming dead air, that drops down to 28, which is roughly the sound of a whisper. So I think that's important to note as well. Commissioner Varenhorst.
I just was gonna say, I can appreciate some of the restrictions. Sure, it's on. I can appreciate some of the caveats that we were talking about imposing as far as the timing, whether it's 8 o'clock to 9:15 or 9:30, whatever. Also, if you do have complaints one season, that'll be considered in any type of renewal. If you want to put in, as the county suggested, restrictions that if the kitchen closes, the outdoor dining closes, no smoking outside, and I guess as we discussed earlier, to the extent that you also have a restriction that you would have to serve food, it's not an outdoor drinking, it's an outdoor dining ordinance. I think those are all important caveats if you're going to move forward on something like this.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Vise. Commissioner Varenhorst.
You know, I'm kind of, I like the idea of outdoor dining. I also, thanks for clarifying that each business has to make an application. Wasn't clear on that. And I think as long as the hours can be sorted out and Mr. Narsini is checking each one for how valid the application is, I'm kind of okay with that. I do have to say I'm kind of disappointed none of the businesses ever, I mean, really the fact that we've had 2 meetings here for hours and we have to go find them, I'm a little puzzled by that.
No, I mean,
and the mom and pop thing doesn't fly with me. Then they should be even more willing to show up.
Sure, I can kind of respond to that. So they were here, and to parade them around, I don't think it's fair to them. They stated their opinion. Some of them are for it, some of them they won't use it, so it doesn't make any difference. To Skip's point of the people in the room that are against it, you received what, 38 pages of emails of people that are for it, that may not have the luxury to get here if they have other activities or other life events going on. Some of these businesses, you know, they're working. And if you want, you know, again, you know, we could have asked them, I could have asked them or to come, I didn't. I thought it'd be better, actually the opposite, taking you there, walking it so you could see it firsthand. To me, that's more important than bringing them here and then them telling something with a map and saying, well, what's this, what's that? If we walked it, which is what I wanted to do, and you say, here's a chair here, there's a table there, we wanted to put something there, but that won't fit. There's a dumpster over there, there's a parking lot here, there's a slant in the road, that doesn't work. We could have seen it firsthand. So again, you know, I'm happy. Again, whether this passes or fails, please, you have my number, you have my email. I'm happy to walk it. You give me a time. Again, I will throw that out to you all again, and please take me up on it.
Well,
You know, I'd like to respond because I've been in the loop in the conversation a couple times now. I appreciate your offer to introduce us to business owners and things like that. There's no transparency for the community. There's just a one-on-one, like, I'd like to get this if I could get it. That doesn't help me that much. I think it's more important. I think it's more important that 50 people or 100 people or people who watch a YouTube of this meeting could see that information and could see elevation photographs and say, I want to put 4 tables here now. I was just looking at Lane's laptop, and Flippin' Bailey has 18 seats outside right now.
So Skip,
So-
I do kind of, I don't want to say take, there's something that you may have forgotten. So this process throughout has been completely transparent. I mean, I put stuff out on
I'm not disagreeing that it.
No, let me finish
Okay.
my point here. Okay, so this has been an ongoing issue, if we can all agree, for several years. Now that this is going to sunset, it's put at the forefront. Now, the first time this was brought to you guys, and if you recall, those that were on the board, you voted unanimously for it. What did I do with staff? We delivered hand letters. We had reverse 911 calls. It was put on the Township Instagram. It was put on the Township Facebook. It was put on my Facebook. I sent out an email. I put it in my newsletter. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So to say that it's not transparent and to say that the residents don't know it,
You're
they do.
misquoting
I mean,
me.
it's just, it's
Sean,
how
you're
many
misquoting
times-
me. You're misquoting me. I said it was not transparent in terms of an interface with a business owner. That's all
But
that I was
the-
saying.
I mean,
I'm not saying that the process in this
Okay.
moment. has not
Commissioner
been-
Kunda, we see who we see. These are small businesses. This is a controversial topic. I think we'll all agree. And I think, for them, what's probably more important is that they don't lose business as a result, regardless of how the vote goes. Now, the Board of Commissioners will have the final vote on this. We make a recommendation tonight, one way or another. I'm not offended that the businesses themselves are not in front of us. I think we, as a commission, we're charged to look at the public benefit and also some of the circumstances that make this untenable, and try to work through them and try to recommend a compromise if there is one to be had. I think it would be nice, to your point, to have both sides represented. And I don't want to take the temperature of the public comment we're about to have, but I'm guessing we're gonna hear from the public, perhaps in the negative. Would it have been nicer to hear both sides equally represented? Sure, but I don't think that stops our work.
To that point, also, the petition that, Sean, you presented to us had a lot of signatures, but they're all from 2020 and 2021, just about.
But so they were for it then, right?
Well,
Most of,
in the-
I
in the
mean, they were
crisis.
for it then. They lived in the restricted part of the overlay. And again, if you're going to talk about people not being here, they have spoken. They are not necessarily against this. And those were people that lived in that height restrictive, from the trolley tracks. Most of them were from the trolley tracks to Conestoga on Garrett Avenue. I mean, they're going to be the people that are going to be affected. There are also people on Williams as well. So, so it's not perfect. Again, it's like you want the business owners here, but if only one of them came, then to Matt's point, then it is like spot zoning. Like, we want this, I want this. This is just to make the neighborhood and the business district nicer. I guess you forget, when Garrett Hill Pizza closed, it was closed for years. It's an eyesore. The Locksmith was closed for years.
Somebody from the audience said that they lost their liquor license, and that's why they were closed.
Well, then they still could have served pizza. Whatever. It doesn't then it needs to sell, and you need to get a new owner in there that'll have something that's not a shuttered business. But we've had shuttered businesses, and when those businesses shutter, they stay that for years. So, and it doesn't have to be a restaurant. That's my whole point. We don't know. I mean, Flippin' Bally's could turn into a bank tomorrow, and where All Seasons, that could turn into a restaurant. I don't know. So to say, what's your plan, or what's this, it could change. So I'm just, you're trying, I guess, what's going on here is you're trying to find out everything that's wrong with it. And no, it's not perfect, but where we are is not perfect either.
If Steve had said to me that if he felt comfortable saying it, we could have 10 tables out there between every operating restaurant that we have today, that would change my opinion.
But to Steve's point, if they're gonna have to submit an application and get permission, and if they said, we want 400 tables, that's gonna get nixed.
That's why I said a ballpark number, not a precise number.
But it's,
I just wanna-
it's gotta go down to another reasonable body, elected or appointed body, such as this board, the Board of Commissioners or zoning.
Commissioner Kim.
So I just want to interrupt. I'm frustrated. You know, I'm on this commission because I'm looking out for my township and my residents, and this is an issue where we're striking a balance between quality of life and economic vitality and resilience. And all we hear is quality of life issues. We don't hear any of the economic vitality resilience proponents. And I think my fellow commissioners share that same sentiment. So I'm not interested in tabling again and having the same conversation and with the same folks. A lot of these people are giving up their time as well to be here, and I want to be respectful of that. I mean, I like to just make a motion to put in the stipulation that Commissioner Lane Vines, put in there, just to put in those parameters in the language in there, and then just we'll recommend that to the commissioners. And I think, it sounds like every time somebody needs to apply for it, it's a public process, right?
No, it's not a public process.
It's a process.
It is a process, for sure.
It could be public if it's gotta go in front of an appointed or elected body, absolutely.
And there's oversight.
But it's a process.
Sure, absolutely. It's not done in darkness,
Okay.
yes.
Commissioner Kim, before we do that, and thank you for moving this along, we do want to hear from the public tonight. Keep in mind, I think in the beginning of the hearing on this, we did outline a lot of the arguments that have already been made. So what we're interested to hear tonight, obviously we're interested to hear from you, but we'd like to hear any additional arguments that we may have missed, perhaps a different take. We understand that this is a controversial issue and we want to be mindful of that, but in the interest of time, if you guys could come up one by one, state your name and
Good evening, and thank you for volunteering and doing a wonderful job. First of all, I want to apologize to Mr. Golis.
Can you state your name, ma'am?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
My name is Lauren Wiegand. I live at 229 Williams Road.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I want to apologize to Mr. Golis. Yes, we do have a petition, and we discussed amongst ourselves whether or not we should bring it. And some of us wanted to bring it, and others didn't want to bring it. So we didn't bring it. So I apologize.
You don't have to apologize. I just think.
Well, I know that you were upset
piece
about
for
it.
me, that's all.
I know that you were upset about it, and we thought that we weren't permitted to bring it to you guys, that we could only bring it to the Board of Commissioners. So there was some misunderstanding there. And that's partly my fault and partly some of the others that were involved, some of their fault. So I just wanted to let you know about that. So you're welcome. The other thing that I wanted to say, if this is I'm trying to get my thoughts together here a little bit. If each business has to apply separately for this, then why are we changing this ordinance at all? Why don't we continue to just have the ordinance as it is and have the businesses apply for a zoning variance? That's been done in the past. Why do we have to do a carte blanche change to an ordinance like this that people worked hard to get. The Garrett Hill Coalition worked with 13 businesses in the area. It took them 9 months to come up with things that were acceptable to each of the businesses. So yes, we are concerned about the economic well-being of the businesses. We're not ogres or monsters. This isn't an adversarial thing like a commissioner wants you guys to believe it is. We're very happy. We agreed to them having tables outdoors during the COVID epidemic. That is a whole different animal. We didn't want them to close. It was years that they were open, and we wanted them to have outdoor dining. We wanted to go up there and to eat, but COVID is over. As to the noise and the lights and everything else, the smoke and whatever goes along, we don't want that. 50 feet is like not acceptable, and you guys mentioned that, and you guys know that. So my proposal is just to keep the ordinance as it is. Why are we making these changes? People worked hard to get this ordinance as it is.
The as it is says no outdoor dining in Garrett Hill.
No outdoor dining, but go to the zoning board.
No application.
Ask for a variance.
After the COVID thing lapses, there is no process.
Well, can we
No, that's
recommend
correct.
something that?
Going in front of a zoning hearing board would be the only option for a restaurant to
Well,
to
what's
get
wrong with that? I mean, we can make compromises during that process, and it will be public. And, you know, it just doesn't make sense to give carte blanche to present and future businesses. Like Sean Farhi said, Flippin' Bailey's could be a bank in 3 years. Well, the automobile business could be a restaurant in a few years, and we could have 50 seats out there. They could knock down all the businesses across the street and have more restaurants and have another 50 seats. That's 100 seats. So yes, there could be changes for the good and the bad. And once again, we are not ogres, and we want the businesses to survive. So I just want you to take that into consideration and let them go before the zoning board and ask for a variance. And then we can have our say about that during that process. Why change all of this where we involved 13 businesses? We worked with them. We worked with them for years. It just wasn't a drop in the bucket thing and a whim on the Garrett Hill Coalition part that, oh, we don't want the businesses to survive. We do want them to survive. But we also want our quality of life. And as to the noise, excuse me, my mouth is dry. You can hear, they have windows. Flippin' Bailey's has windows. Garrett Hill Ale House has windows. They can open those windows on certain days until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. They can have those windows open. A couple of seats outdoors is not going to make or break a restaurant. We can hear with those windows open. I live down, I don't know, maybe 200 feet. I hear everything when those windows are open. You don't think I'm not going to hear everything when people are outdoors? And it's not just talking. When people drink, people get loud. I get loud when I drink. People yell at me. So I know how it is. And I don't want to hear people down the street. I love outdoor dining. I go to Bryn Mawr for outdoor dining. I don't necessarily want outdoor dining right up the street from where I live. Okay, that's enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Just as a point of clarification, Mr. Norsini or solicitor, our current ordinance where you have windows open, does it allow for amplified music? I know that's a doozy. I'll let you guys look that up.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
Sure. Thank you.
Can I just make just two quick responses? Just
We're not going to do that right now.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
Hi.
My name is Dee Delaney, and I live at 229 Williams Road, just down the road from Flippin' Bailey's and the Garrett Hill Ale House. I know for a fact that the Garrett Hill Ale House and Flippin' Bailey's, on their alcohol application, they have an entertainment endorsement. They also have, Flippin' Bailey's put in these big windows that are almost floor to ceiling that open up and close. And we had preferred that they not open them at all, but I think they got approval either for 9 or 10 p.m. they have to be closed. So staying with Flippin' Bailey's a moment, and with their entertainment endorsement, prior to COVID, during the week, they had Quizno night, and they had it upstairs on the 2nd floor. And just with the small window that faces down Williams, you could hear everything because they had an MC with a mic, everything was amplified, and everybody was cheering. And I've called the police several times on noise disturbances. And sometimes I'm just hanging out up there in the like late at night, and then finally I just go home. One time a policewoman came pretty quick, and she understood, and she made them shut the window and turn it down. So on the Garrett Hill Ale House side, they also have an entertainment endorsement. And their windows are like big what do you call them? They're not floor to ceiling, but they're large. And they did a pretty good job of keeping the windows closed. But even with the windows closed, I was like shocked. And you know how small the Garrett Hill Ale House is? How small it is, this low ceiling and everything? They had a band playing in the corner next to the door with a drum set, 2 electric guitars, and people singing. And so in that case, I walked up there to ask them if they could, cut the music, because it was like, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night. And the interesting thing was, I'm trying to talk to the bartender who seemed to be the person in charge, and we're head to head, and we still couldn't hear each other. So we had to write on napkins in order to have some discussion. And he said, oh, well, we're, on the napkin, we're getting ready to turn it down. But why do we have to hang out up at the corner or go into places? It's craziness. So now I think on the alcohol application for Exit 13, I know that there had been a alcohol application sometime prior to them opening up, but I saw that they were also requesting an entertainment endorsement. I've not seen anything or heard any entertainment at this point, but if they have it, it's something that they can do. And they actually have in their dining area full, up to the ceiling, down to the floor windows. What else can I tell you? So that's a problem. And, COVID's happened, things have closed down, and so, we haven't had those big noise disturbances, but I have a feeling when things start to go back and they need the revenue to bring people in, and these were popular programs, it's going to happen again. So that on top of outdoor dining, all of that on top of outdoor dining. I mean, that could easily get out of control, which is already out of control when it happens. Just also, I want to apologize about the petition, because I had the same understanding. And believe me, I can get that petition to all of you tomorrow. Wherever you live, wherever you work, because...
We'll take your word for it.
Okay.
Thank you. We're aware it exists.
Okay, great, thank you. Let me just move on down here. Okay, so here's the other thing about traffic. On Williams Road, that's like the one place where people can sometimes snag a parking place when they want to go to one of the restaurants, and it's where the traffic light is, and traffic is a problem. And even during the daytime, people that don't live in that part of the community cars, like from a distance, see the green light, and they barrel down Williams Road to try to catch the light. And when you were talking about younger families in particular, that's where the concentration of our younger families are, on the front end of Williams Road, closest to the restaurants. And that's one of the reasons they're not here, because both parents are working. They either have a newborn and a toddler, and their lives, they're running ragged, going back and forth, trying to have a nice home for their kids. And they've bought homes thinking that they're going to be protected, thinking that they had certain quality of life issues in Radnor Township. And if this gets out of hand again, they're going to be questioning that decision. There are, the last time I counted, there are 13 kids within Williams and Fitzwilliams, little kids. And during the day, they're out, they're learning pedestrian crossing things, and there are different stages at that. And everyone's always looking out for them because they see somebody across the street and they're wanting to run out. And sometimes the parents are a little bit a distance back. And it's, you have to run in to stop them to make sure that they're going to be safe. So traffic-wise, this brings more, I think, outdoor dining, and the entertainment part brings more people into our neighborhood. And that's a problem. We don't want to exacerbate things, and I know you don't want to, and I really appreciate the questioning that you've been doing tonight and the care and the concern that you have. Because Garrett Hill is unique, and Bill, who owns the seafood place, he was quoted in a newspaper article that I can also send to you along with the petition, that he said that a neighborhood like Garrett Hill is becoming rarer and rarer in the country, not just in our general community. And I just feel like we need protections, and I'm so grateful that you're thinking about that, and all of you. And this is an important decision because it doesn't take much to break a neighborhood apart. It's like a relationship. You have to pay attention to the big details and also the small details. Parking's also another issue. We have a lot of healthcare workers that work nights or evenings and during the day, and when they come home, they can't find parking, and they're having to park 2 or 3 blocks away. And in the morning, they see empty parking spaces where people that have been in the bars and stuff have finally moved their cars. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh, and then there's the other issue that isn't there a new Radnor master plan that's being planned? I mean, wouldn't that be a nice thing to cohesively, along with the whole township, look at and figure this stuff out about the outdoor dining rather than making a quick decision tonight? Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Just as a way of clarification on the existing ordinance amendment, the existing ordinance amendment does not allow amplified music, is that correct?
That currently is in the outdoor dining, yes. It's absolutely not allowed.
Okay.
To build on that question, Radnor has a separate noise ordinance that says any amplified music or any amplified sound, if it can be audibly heard within 100 feet of the property boundary, violates that ordinance. Likewise, the Liquor Control Board, if any of these restaurants are licensees, the Liquor Control Board has its own set of regulations regarding amplified music, both indoors and outdoors. So generally speaking, yeah, no amplified music whatsoever for outdoor dining anywhere in the township. And if you have amplified music or loudspeakers that are going to be audibly heard within 100 feet of the business, even if that is something that's happening inside the business, that is illegal, not only under Radnor ordinances, but also under regulations of the Liquor Control Board.
So, Solicitor, I want to unpack this a little bit. How about unamplified music?
No. Well, outside?
Yes.
No, not allowed.
Not allowed.
Not allowed. That's the current regulations don't allow music at all from outdoor dining.
Okay, and that includes singing, a cappella, I assume.
Yes. Yes. So here, hold on 2 seconds. I have them right here. Okay. Noise. Outdoor dining shall be subject to Chapter 200. That's the 100-foot rule. No amplified music or sound is permitted. All activities, including the playing of music and other forms of entertainment, shall comply with the noise limitations of the township ordinances and any other regulatory agencies having jurisdiction as applicable. Okay, so yes, you can sing, but if someone is 100 feet of you singing and it is audible to them, you're violating Section 200, the noise ordinance. So strictly speaking, unless you're singing under your voice, you can't sing outside, even if it's unamplified.
Mm-hmm. And dance? No, I withdraw that. Okay, got it.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask one question?
Sure, please.
So this to the solicitor, as far as the seating and the amount of people that are coming into the establishment, is it required that it be net neutral if you're bringing out the outdoor seating?
What under the proposed amendment, what's net neutral is the parking.
I see.
And parking is based on the number of seats. So if you want to have 4 outdoor seats, you got to eliminate 4 indoor seats. Otherwise, it's not parking neutral. So the ordinance amendment that you're considering doesn't specifically say you have to be neutral as to the number of seats. So if you have, and I don't think there is any place in Garrett Hill this way, if you have a restaurant that has more than ample parking, yes, they could add additional outdoor seats. But strictly speaking, if you don't have adequate parking or you only have enough parking for your indoor seats, you got to eliminate the indoor seats to add the outdoor seats in order to comply with parking.
Okay, got it. So we appreciate the public participation tonight. Is there any additional public comment?
Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road. I'm a frequent walker in the community, and I hear and see things. And one of the comments that I heard recently was these decisions are made during ebb tide. That means everything's pretty low. The students aren't back. During COVID, we didn't have students in our neighborhood for the most part in our restaurants and dining. They were pretty much contained in campus. I think Garrett Hill changes significantly just as Radnor Township changes. In about 6 weeks, you will see a very different neighborhood. You will see a very different township. So I think it's very interesting that decisions such as this are made during ebb tide. And I think you need to think about what's going to happen as we deal with more extreme conditions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I want to refine my answer. No, I looked at the ordinance again, it actually is a 1-for-1 reduction. If you add an outdoor seat, you have to eliminate an indoor seat. It does mention parking, but it doesn't say specifically to keep parking even. It does say specifically if you add an outdoor seat, you have to eliminate an indoor seat.
No, Peter,
Sorry for the confusion.
Peter, it would, because let's say you take a parking spot. So if you move, let's say you put one table, a 4-top outside, and you put it in a parking spot. You'd have to take 4, if you're moving 4 seats inside, outside, then you have to close 4 seats inside. And if you're in a parking spot, I think it's 3 chairs per spot, so you'd lose 7 seats in total. So it is net neutral.
Are you assuming, Commissioner, that they're compliant as to the parking requirements?
As who is compliant?
The restaurant.
That's something that, I mean, I'm not here. I can't enforce that. That's up to codes. That's up to the police. It's like anything else, any other ordinance on the books. That's not for me to opine on that.
I'm sorry, conforming. It was the word that I wanted.
Oh, okay.
I think this is probably the township engineer question. So if the restaurant is non-compliant, non-conforming as to parking, and they take away a parking spot, are they allowed to remain net neutral in terms of seating? Or is that, or,
No, they're non-conforming, they can't take away a parking spot. So they have to maintain the parking. I think that's one of the problems with Flippin' Bailey's, is that we're assuming the only place they can do outdoor dining is in the parking area, which would reduce the number of parking they have, which means they have to go get relief to that reduction. So, yeah, if they eliminate a parking spot, they need to get relief. Or they would have to lower their parking needs.
is that clear? That's an important point. So most of the restaurants are, parking is at a premium, so if they're already non-conforming, they're not allowed to reduce their parking.
Well, let me get clarification. They are allowed to remove their parking if they remove seats, correct? I mean, as long as it remains net neutral, that's what this ordinance is. Knowing that this is non-conforming, and it's still pretty much always going to be non-conforming. Correct, Peter?
But, yeah, if they're required to provide 5 parking spots, and they have 5 parking spots, and then they use one of them for outdoor dining, they would have to then reduce the number of seats for both indoor and outdoor.
Correct.
For only four parking spots.
Correct. So if you put a table of 4 in one parking spot, you lose 4 seats outside and 3 seats because it's 1 parking spot for 3 seats. So you lose 7 seats. Got it. Thanks.
I would agree with that math.
All right. Good evening.
Hi. My name is Lynn Ellis. I'm from 908 Lewis Lane in Rosemont. My husband and I were walking up Garrett Avenue against the brick bar or ale house. And we got to the corner of Conestoga Road, and there were bistro tables out there that we had to walk single filely around. And that's because nobody was sitting there. And if we did have to have people sitting there at the time, we would have had to walk in the street. It's not North Wayne Avenue with their big wide sidewalks. It's just little tiny Garrett Hill. The other thing I'd like to say is the lock shop that's endlessly being brought up, they got burned down, so it took them a while to rebuild the building. That's why they were closed. I was really happy at the dedication of Richard Allen Park when Mr. Sean made a speech about the importance of protecting our little old neighborhoods. And I think we should be protecting Garrett Hill. The other thing I'd like to say is I've been to an awful lot of planning commission meetings because I was a township secretary and had to do the minutes for years. That was Duncan Hubley. I've never seen a commissioner come to a meeting. I've always seen Nick Caniglia with the applicant. I've never seen a commissioner come and bother you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay. So we've had ample opportunity to consider this ordinance amendment, and we heard obviously from the biggest proponent of the amendment, Commissioner Farhi, as well as from the township, both in our hearings, this one and the previous one, as well as in written form. I think everyone appreciates the challenge that's in front of us tonight. To Commissioner Wu's point, we have to balance the overall needs of the township as well as the individuals that live in it and do business in it. And our challenge here is to really craft a compromise of sorts and see if that's possible. With that being said, I'd like to make a motion, and I heard 7 things that that I'd like to give air to. If we were to approve this ordinance, one of the items was to restrict the seating, perhaps have the last seating at 8 and wrap up outdoor dining at 9:30. One of the recommendations that the Delaware County Planning Commission made was that the kitchen, if the kitchen closes prematurely, outdoor dining closes as well. They also recommended a buffer between the outdoor dining establishment as well as the residential property. There was a recommendation to eliminate outdoor smoking, as well as just drinking outside, so the customer must order food as well. And also no loitering during or after outdoor seating hours, so you have to actually be a patron and not and order food during outdoor dining, and you can't stay there after hours. And last but not least, outdoor dining permit renewal would take into account nuisance complaints against the business in deciding whether they would grant a renewal. So those were the 7 things I heard. There may have been others. If we were to craft a motion to approve, and how you vote on it is, of course, your conscience, were there any additional items that you would like to include there as our recommendation to the Board of Commissioners?
I go back to the point about having at least some sort of a formula with a maximum number of tables. I understand there's an application process, but at least you put into the ordinance where you have the size of the outdoor seating area from a square footage standpoint, and there has to be some sort of a formula that maybe there's a maximum of 60% or 75% of that GLA will be devoted to tables. Average table size is, so many feet, right? But the idea is you have some sort of a formula or density that basically puts out the maximum number of tables that could be there. My rationale behind that is, again, my earlier point about if you're living 50 feet or 100 feet away from the premises and you're having 2 tables out there versus having 10 tables out there. So the noise is basically the means to kind of control the noise. But so I just think it's like if you're able to put a certain boundaries on the number of tables, I think that would be helpful.
Commissioner Nat, for simplicity's sake, would that look like an overall limit on outdoor seats?
Yes.
Okay, and if you were to opine, what would that number be?
Again, it's a relationship to the size of Flip and Bailey, going back, their area where they, or at least where I see when I drive by there, is a certain size. Conestoga Pizza would be something smaller, or across the street would be something smaller. So I just think it has to be somewhat formulatic based upon the square footage, the outside area.
Can I jump in here? So I think that's fair, but I think it should be a sliding scale. So, for instance, a Chinese restaurant, they don't have any seats, they're not going to have any there. But if they had 1 seat or 3 seats, they could probably have 3 seats outside. So it should be some kind of sliding scale. I don't want to try to come up with something on the fly, but I think that's something that we could have our engineer as well as our codes. And again, let's walk this if you want, and we can try to come up something, and that could be, again, it's just not going to be in this recommendation, but you can make that formal recommendation if this is approved and this goes to the Board of Commissioners. So we can have something a little bit more thought out, and if members of the community want to help in that exercise, I would absolutely love it.
So what I heard was your recommendation was to develop a ratio of indoor seating to outdoor seating in the permit.
That maximizes seating.
Okay. Got it. Am I missing anything else?
Just real quick, so the prior ordinance did have something kind of like that, where like the first 12 seats were free, like you didn't have to have any, take any seats away from the inside, and then there was a ratio thereafter. I don't necessarily think,
Sean, I think that was about parking.
no, that's from the prior, a couple
The-
years ago. No, it's the first 12 seats, you didn't have to account for any of the parking. And then everything thereafter, Peter, I don't know if you remember that, or John Rice would be able to better remember that, or maybe,
No, it does sound familiar.
yeah. So that, to Commissioner Nat's point, it's not foreign. Like, we get it.
Okay.
And we'll try to come up with something that we want. I mean, I think, I hear what everybody's saying, but I think that, there are a lot of stakeholders involved, and it's got to work for everybody. So let's
Correct.
Let's do it.
There should be mutual compromise.
Is there anything else if we were to craft this? Commissioner Vines? No? Okay. I'm going to make a motion to recommend approval of the Garrett Hill Dining Ordinance Amendment, subject to 8 conditions. I will restate them for the record. So the first being the last seating, outdoor seating is at 8, and outdoor dining will be done at 9:30 p.m. Also, the recommendation that the township develop a ratio of indoor seating to outdoor seating with a goal to establish a maximum of outdoor seating. Third condition would be that.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, could you slow down? Because
Sure.
We're going to have to get this off the minutes, but we're also writing them. I apologize for interrupting.
I will provide that to you electronically if you'd like.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. The third condition would be that outdoor dining ceases once the kitchen is closed, in the event that the kitchen closes early. Fourth condition would be a buffer would be established with between the restaurant and the residential lots. Fifth condition would be no smoking would be allowed in the outdoor dining area. Sixth condition would be no drinking would be allowed without food being served as well. Seventh condition, no loitering during or after outdoor seating hours would be allowed. And then eighth, the outdoor dining permit renewal would take into account nuisance complaints against the business with outdoor dining. I will say that as a general recommendation, some of these restrictions make sense overall, township-wide, when you look at outdoor dining as a whole. And regardless of how we vote on this motion, obviously the Board of Commissioners will have the final say on what this looks like. So with that being said, can I get a second on this motion? So second by Vines. All in favor?
Aye.
So Wu, Nat, Vines, Varenhorst, 4. Against? Golis? And Kunda? No. Motion passes. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you.